With less than 2 weeks left in office, the Biden administration is announcing its final shipment of weapons for Ukraine. The administration believes nearly all of this $500 million worth of weapons will arrive before the inauguration of Donald Trump.
To wage a war, all you need is a strong military, armaments, and to be a bully, of course. But to win a war or at least have a favorable peace treaty, you need the U.S. I won't go over recounting how the U.S. entered World War I and how the odds tipped in favor of the Allies. No, that is not the war this video is interested in. However, the particular war this video is about is the war in Ukraine. Do you know that since the Russian invasion, the U.S. has spent over $170 billion in aid to Ukraine? As if that's not enough, in December 2024, the Biden administration announced an additional $5.9 billion in aid, marking the final distribution of funds before President-elect Donald Trump takes office in January 2025. The question on everyone's mind is, will these commitments continue when Trump enters the Oval Office in a few days?
In his statement on U.S. support for Ukraine, Biden stated that the aid includes an additional $1.25 billion drawdown package for the Ukrainian military and a $1.22 billion Ukraine Security Assistance Initiative package. Washington has committed billions of dollars in aid.
When the going gets tough, the tough need huge financial aid. I know this wasn't what you were expecting to hear, but that is the reality. Anyway, the White House is aiming to give Ukraine as much leverage as possible before any potential peace talks. You see, this aid package is a strategic move to set the stage for future negotiations with Russia. You actually don't need to be a political analyst to recognize that what Washington is doing is loading the dice in favor of Ukraine, hoping that this will tip the scales in their favor. Is it a good plan? Yes. Will it work? Not quite sure. But for what it's worth, the Biden administration giving such huge aid to Ukraine to tip the scales in the negotiation table is quite an impressive move. I mean, it will help Ukraine appear as a worthy opponent to Russia and ensure they have a say in the table. Who knows? It might even be the breakthrough needed to play down the hands of Russia and negotiate the end to this war. Is it a fair game? All is fair in love and war. Is it too little? Too late? Well, that depends on the type of foreign policy Trump will adopt when he assumes office in a few days. Now, with Trump's inauguration looming, there's a sense of uncertainty about how U.S. foreign policy will shift. Will the U.S. continue to be a strong ally to Ukraine, or will Trump's America First approach take center stage? Donald Trump has always been known for his unconventional approach to foreign policy. During his previous presidency, he championed the America First mantra, which to sound like a politician means questioning the value of foreign military aid and U.S. involvement in conflicts abroad. Then, for those not very conversant with political terms, it simply means putting the United States' needs first. He believed that before helping others, the U.S. should first focus on its own problems. And if the U.S. was going to give money or military support, it should get something tangible in return. A transactional approach to foreign relations, you scratch my back, and I'll scratch yours. Is the approach selfish or fair? It depends on who you ask. But one thing is certain. However controversial this transactional approach is, we can't deny the fact that it will ensure that the U.S. won't be used as a cash cow by other countries, particularly the NATO members. Speaking of NATO, Trump has consistently argued that many NATO allies weren't pulling their weight when it comes to defense spending. Trump simply wants NATO members to meet their financial commitments, so the U.S. wouldn't have to bear the burden alone. He has been particularly vocal about NATO, and when you see the numbers, you'll understand why.
Well, I think NATO should have 5%, yeah. Well, you can't do it at 2%. I mean, at 2%, every country, if you're going to have a country in a regular military, you're at 4%. I think they should be, they're in dangerous territory. I think it should be, they can all afford it, but they should be at 5%, not 2%. I'm the one that got them to pay 2%.
To put it into context, as of December 2024, the U.S. accounts for about 2/3 of NATO's total defense spending, which is outrageously higher than any other member. What Trump has been trying to let them know is, a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. If some NATO members don't contribute enough, the whole alliance will be weakened. And that would be very devastating for the Union and the geopolitical landscape, particularly during these troubling times. However, It is in troubling times that true alliances and characters are tested. At the heart of this complex timeline is Donald Trump's relationship with Russia and its leader, Vladimir Putin. Trump has been accused of consistently showing a favorable tone toward Putin. Critics argue that his approach is too soft, especially when compared to his successor, Joe Biden, who has taken a much tougher stance. But what these critics haven't realized yet is that Trump has a pragmatic style of diplomacy. Let me throw more light. You see, during his first tenure, Trump's interactions with Putin were heavily scrutinized, to say the least. He was even accused of being indifferent to Ukraine's defense amidst the impending Russian invasion at the time. Which was not true, because the Trump administration committed over $2.6 billion in military aid to Ukraine, which was approximately 40 to 50% of the total military aid received by Ukraine during this period. Not to mention the Javelin anti-tank missiles they also gave to them. If this is what being indifferent means, then they are right. However, Trump often framed this support as a response to Ukraine's need for self-defense, rather than an ideological commitment to their cause. This nuanced approach has been interpreted in various ways, but it all points to one thing: Trump's pragmatic diplomatic style. As Trump is about to assume office for his second tenure, and being that his mantra has always been about achieving peace, surely you'd expect resolving the war in Ukraine will be in his 12 months in office agenda, or at most 18 months plan, right? You are wrong. Trump has famously claimed he could resolve the Ukraine-Russia conflict in just 24 hours.
If I were president, and I say this, I will end that war in one day. It'll take 24 hours. I know Zelensky well. I know Putin well. I would get that ended in a period of 24
You can break that deal.
100%. It would be easy.
Now, if you think that's wishful thinking, then we are on the same page. Regardless, he has hinted at having direct talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin, which could be the key to unlocking a quick resolution. After all, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, and sometimes unlikely alliances can lead to unexpected breakthroughs. Nevertheless, Trump hasn't exactly laid out a step-by-step plan for how he intends to achieve this feat. It's a bit like trying to find a needle in a haystack without knowing what the needle looks like. Yes, we may not know what the needle looks like, but what we do know is that complex negotiations require groundwork, concessions, and sustained talks. Things that can't be rushed into a 24-hour window. However, Trump is Trump, and his reputation in negotiation success precedes him. So maybe he can actually do it, or maybe not. There's only one way to find out, and that is in a few days' time. Meanwhile, the situation in Ukraine is dire. The war has been raging on, causing immense suffering and reshaping geopolitical alliances. It's a catch-22 situation. Ukraine needs support to defend itself, but any premature ceasefire could lead to a loss of territory and influence. An undesirable dilemma, to put it mildly. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed concerns that a rapid settlement might favor Russia, which is why he's cautious about Trump's promise. He doesn't want to risk losing what he has fought so hard to maintain. The international community is watching closely. Russia's United Nations ambassador, Vasily Nebenzia, has dismissed Trump's claim, saying the complexity of the conflict is not something that can be resolved within 24 hours. Notwithstanding, Putin himself has shown interest in Trump's statements, suggesting that there might be some room for negotiation. Of course, it's a delicate geopolitics, where you have to give a little to get a little. The question is, what would Trump be willing to give and what would he get in return? Only time will tell. In the meantime, Trump's America First policy could see the U.S. pivot away from the level of commitment shown by the Biden administration. This could mean a reduced role in foreign military engagements, which would be a significant departure from recent U.S. foreign policy. The question on everyone's mind is whether Trump would continue the $55.5 billion in military aid committed to Ukraine from February 2022 to mid-2024. If he decides to scale back, it could send a signal that the U.S. is no longer willing to bear the financial burden of supporting Ukraine's defense. Trump's stance on NATO membership for Ukraine has also been a point of contention. He has expressed sympathy with Russia's opposition to Ukraine joining NATO, which aligns with his broader skepticism about international alliances. This stance has left NATO allies and Ukraine wondering about the future of U.S. support.
Yesterday, Trump suggested that he would reverse decades of U.S. policy that called for an open door to European countries to join NATO so long as they met NATO criteria. When Trump suggested he would not let Ukraine join NATO, echoing the Russian argument for why Ukraine should not join.
Russia has somebody right on their doorstep, and I could understand their feeling about that.
The uncertainty surrounding U.S. policy under Trump's leadership has been a topic for debate in recent weeks. NATO allies are bracing for impact due to potential changes in U.S. commitment to collective defense, while Ukraine is preparing for the worst-case scenario, reduced military aid and increased pressure to negotiate with Russia. Nevertheless, it's not all bleak. You can agree with me that, if there's one distinctive gift Trump is endowed with, it is turning adversity into opportunity, a hallmark of his leadership style. Capital. Yes, his approach to geopolitics is unconventional. But sometimes it's the unconventional thinkers who bring about change. Make sure to check out other interesting videos on our channel. Like and share this video to spread awareness. If you haven't already, subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss out on our future content. Thank you for your support. This is Donald Unfiltered. See you in our next video.